since Jennifer Diane's report, we moved more out of that which is just, centered in bloodline to, like we see in Genesis 6:2, to whomever they chose. So some of you other ladies, I know I visited with Barbara in New Jersey prior to our meeting tonight, and perhaps you could come on and just, describe, would you describe this, the experience that would involve the conception of these hybrids as what we see in Genesis 6? Even though the women in Genesis 6 weren't bloodline, they were just women of Adam. But the actual event, would you describe it the same way? And do you have any thoughts or comments in terms of what we talked about before we came on the Bite Show today, Barbara?
I would describe it.
Can you get closer to the speaker, because we can just barely hear you?
I would describe it as to how it happened in Genesis 6, absolutely. I guess, for me, the greatest understanding is the very terminology for whom they chose. My understanding is that that has been true from the very beginning. It's just that choosing bloodline women was what they did choose. It's not so much they couldn't, it's that they didn't choose women at large. They chose to work with a specific bloodline in the beginning, I think for control reasons more than any other thing. It's just a smaller control group, and it's all about what they have in line for the end. So they chose to work with a specific lineage so that they could have control of the results. And it still falls under the auspices of for whom they chose. The Genesis 6 program really began in probably like 1962, 1963, when the first Nephilim were born of this whole project. Other than that, I guess I could say it's hard to equate it with any other kind of sexual act, because it's the same, but it's not the same. It's off the charts. There's no way to even put words to describe it.
And that's what Barbara. All the ladies that I've worked with and that are not here tonight that have reported this. It's such a traumatic event that the protection and the denial and even getting to this is, from a therapeutic or a counseling perspective, it involves tremendous challenges to get to that place where you even have the knowledge of what happened to you.
I think even to this day, it's the area where I prone to relapse, if that's a good word, into denial, more than probably any other truth about my life that I've had to come to terms with.
Yeah.
I always, there's drugs involved, there's spirits involved, there's sacrifices involved. You can't trust what you're remembering and feeling and seeing. And I think I've struggled with denial around this probably more than any other single thing.
Yeah. And I've seen that, with people. Of course, denial is always is one of the strongest and first-line defense mechanisms of those who have experienced repetitive and chronic trauma. And when people are experienced counselors and therapists, they understand the role of denial. Denial doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means the level and degree that denial is in place is indicative of the overwhelming nature of the trauma. So denial doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means it was so horrific that denial is the way to push it out of your stream of consciousness, so that you don't have to even deal or think about it as something that has ever happened. I would like to also just, I think I could bring in whoever wants to here. I think about Constantina. You were kind of like Grand Dame. You were one of the first that as a bloodline, as a Collins. I don't know why they chose the Collins. I think not only they must have a specific accumulation of generational iniquity, but they were available. And when these principalities wanted to restart this hybrid program, breeding program for this generation, it would seem to me like the Collins were the most suitable to begin this project with because of their bloodline. But maybe I can start with Connie or whoever with this. Would you say that it's the same way that we see in Genesis 6? And do you have any thoughts or comments as to what you would like to add to this discussion at this point? One, was this like what happened in Genesis 6?
Yes. Make a correction. Collins.
Collins, thank you.
And yes, definitely like in Genesis 6, excepting like with me and I think with some others, it was directly with Satan himself. Instead of, he's an angel, but he's kind of in a category all his own. So yeah, I don't know if I need to say more than that.
So why would you think that they is beginning this project before they began to be able to connect with as many as they could choose in terms of the whole human race? Why do you think they selected the O'Collins?
Because of they're a direct line with Nimrod, and the strong Druidic. They were wanting to bring it in the Druidic bloodline because it's one of the oldest. It's the oldest. There's just. I'm sorry. I'm really having just a little difficulty here. Because of what was brought into that family through the generations of the Druidic bloodline, the passing down of the oracles and so forth, the direct line into Nimrod himself from back in Bible times.
Okay. So when we go back to Nimrod, what is referred to as Druidic today, if we go back to the time of Nimrod, who was the founder of Babylon, then what we're talking about is the Druidic religion is the most pristine representation of the old Babylonian religion.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so through that, they had tied in with the Nazis and all the programming, all the stuff that they had in mind of the projects of bringing in the Nephilim into the bloodline specifically. That was a big thing for them back in 1949. So I know I'm probably not making a lot of sense tonight.
No, that does, because we know that I was talking with Barbara before we went on the air here, is that the Germans, in terms of their occultic science, they believed in the eugenics and the evolutionary process of man, and they were seeking to attain that Aryan root race, and they were wanting to basically become God-men.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about the Aryan race, but actually what they wanted was a race of God-men.
Yeah.
Angels cohabiting with women. That was the goal. And as many as possible. So that's where some of the other stuff came in then, of the harvesting of eggs, so that in the bloodline those eggs would get out into all the different women, not just, so I don't know, there's just a lot tied in with that.
Yes. Anyone else want to come in? I know as I discussed this last week with I know Susan and Julie. In the beginning, when this began to come out, they began to talk about these events and experiences, and my tendency was, I just didn't believe this readily, and I know this had an effect on Julie and Susan, so that they were not even able to get to some of these deeper hidden memories and traumatic states until you both, I know with you, Susan, especially, until you actually were sure that I would believe you. And so it wasn't like, that it's something that you couldn't have reported. that happened to you, but I think there was a question of being believed and affirmed because you've been told you're liars if you ever talk about anything like this anyway in terms of the programming. And so I've been kind of slow in some respects for some of you to be able to understand, how you're unique, you're all different, you're not the same. And so when I began this, of course, Sally was more or less was the one we began with, and so I kind of compared you to her and others, which was unfair to you. You have your own history, you have your own experience, and so I've apologized for my slowness. But would you, not Sally, but Susan, Julie, would you say that what happened to you in what you have remembered as conceiving and birth of these Nephilim hybrids is the same as what we see in Genesis 6 in terms of a sexual act?
Oh, yes, I definitely would confirm that, Doug. I think the part of the difference is, though, that when you talk to Barbara and Sally and Connie, they were really designed to conceive the prophet, or the one function, the one Nephilim. And for me, it was very different. That wasn't like that was one of the main purposes, but I was never, my sons weren't in the position of theirs, and my sons were more or less sacrificed at different stages to power up their sons.
I see. And
so mine's a little different category. And then also I had another function more with Dan and his position, which he's described, in his testimony. And so it wasn't like that was the whole focus of my preparation.
Okay. And I think that's important because you did mention like someone like Sally that she was selected to bring forth that which would be a prototype and representation of the false prophet. We have Constantina, who was there as a grande dame mother to bring forth a prototype and representation of the Antichrist. Barbara to bring forth that which it embodies Apollyon, the beast. So we have some of these other hybrids that are coming in to represent a power base, if you will. But Juliana, would you affirm and testify that what these women have described as the conception and giving birth to hybrids is what we see happening in Genesis 6 in your history and what you're in touch with?
Yes, I think in our first Nephilim Mother broadcasting, I described that the union with this creature, this angelic creature, was like being raped with 3 swords, one that went into your spirit, one that went into your soul, and one that went into your body. And that was, yes, and it was a sexual union. It was angelic, and there was no human agent there.
And when it comes to the DID response in terms of fragmentation, you've had all kinds of abuse in terms of humans and every kind of torture. What level of fragmentation did this event represent in terms of creating your whole DID structure in response to the trauma?
I believe that we were prepared from conception on for this union. They scored me into 3 parts corresponding to the different angelic creatures that I would be interacting with, bringing in the Black Trinity into my soul, spirit, whatever, and then prepared at birth to. They put me in isolation where I was with these principalities that would eventually conceive these spirits, so that I bonded with these things.
When you say conceive these spirits, you mean conceive these hybrids?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So there was a lot of preparation that went into it, but and so there was splitting from the get-go
around it.